Okay, so welcome to the first episode of Guiding Stars. We're your hosts. I'm Stephanie, also known as the Star Keeper.
And I'm Starlyn.
And this is our first episode where we kind of just want to share our views, our beliefs, our story, really, too, because we both know so many people right now are kind of waking up at this stage in the game of reality and kind of need something to follow in a sense of like a guiding star or a lighthouse, right? You can get so lost that you don't see the forest through the trees. And so we both kind of woke up, for lack of better words, to the false reality that is presented in front of us um, quite a few years ago. So maybe we should just start with like kind of talking about like what woke us up, why we woke up, and like the first path and feelings that we kind of experienced. So do you want to go first? Like what around year would you say that you started to realize something ain't right?
Well, okay, so that's actually tricky because I kind of feel like my entire life I have felt like there's something not right,
Yeah.
something off. Um, but it wasn't until I would say about 2012 is when I really started paying attention to these feelings that I've always had
Mhm.
within. I unfortunately had an arm injury in 2011, which hindered me from working for quite some time with the recovery process of it all. And, it was like a blessing in disguise because it actually gave me the time.
Yeah.
I had nothing to do. I wasn't working. I was sitting at home all day while my kids were in school, and I started diving deep. Um, so I would say about 2011 to 2012 was when I really kind of started tapping in
Hmm.
to my inner feelings. But I would say 2016 was when I really started having an awakening within. So many things within myself weren't lining up with the things I was seeing outside, and it was really confusing.
Yeah.
So I kind of just sort of, as they say, jumped down the rabbit hole, and it has led me to where I am today. And I am so glad that I ended up doing that because I feel like it's so much better to be self-aware of what's actually really going on around us, because it's really
Yeah.
important that we pay attention to the reality so we can manage it
Yeah.
and make a better world for everybody.
Yeah. It's funny because I was just saying over this past weekend, I was hanging out with a friend. We took some time to be in nature, and we were doing a short meditation in front of the water, and I kind of like turned around and I said, let's take a moment to be grateful that this stage in the game, this point in reality in all our lives, we were different ages and everything like that, that we now have the eyes to see what is happening, that we were able to see some of this misdirection and confusion coming from far away, that we weren't able to get swept up into it. So yeah, like waking up, is definitely a journey, and it doesn't mean that, there's a cutoff time or that you can be late to it, but it is something where it's like you're so grateful that you were able to, see this now so that you can guide others out of it rather than everybody kind of getting swept up and lost. And it's funny, I know we've talked about, our awakenings together, but we share the same years. um I also felt like growing up as a child, there was always something very strange about reality that I just didn't understand, or not reality, but society, the way we functioned as humans. It just didn't seem natural. It didn't seem like anything was in our best interest. And granted, I understood very little of it anyway. But I was like, what is all this? Why do we have to work so hard just to live? I was looking at the animals, and they don't have to do all these things that they don't want to do. They just exist. And I was like, if we made it up, why can't we unmake it up? And I had all these thoughts as a kid, right? And then same as you, 2012, um, I didn't have an injury cause me to have downtime, but I just started to go down rabbit holes. I started noticing in the music I was listening to that they all started saying the same thing. They all started talking about this Illuminati and doing the same gestures and covering the eyes and doing the pyramids and saying these certain things, and black and white checkered floors and all the videos. And I'm like, what does any of this mean? So 2012, I dove down the conspiracy rabbit holes. Um, you know, what's going on behind the music industry was the first one. That led me to aliens. Don't ask me how, but it led me to thinking about the Greys and reptilians and other species that might be here, and space travel and all this other stuff. And I was always interested in space and astronomy. And that led me to government conspiracies and what they're really doing, and how they pull these false flag attacks, and they create the narratives, and they fund and are associated with Hollywood, and I'm like, oh my God, everything's a lie. I then turned atheist, but I never wanted to say I was atheist. I preferred using the word agnostic because I felt like I should believe in something. Like there was something inherent inside of myself that I was like, I can't just give up on everything. I can't just be atheist, right? I was like, that means nothing. That doesn't feel right.
Either.
And
Yeah.
you have the same feeling?
It's same thing with me as well. I
Yeah.
couldn't say I wasn't atheist because I knew I believed in something. I was
Yeah.
just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
Isn't that funny that inner pull, like it's coded into us? I talked like I was one, but if you asked me what I was, it felt safer to be, I'm agnostic. I don't know what I believe, but there's something, right? And for a long time, I felt very betrayed by the idea of God, by the system of religion, and it got real dark. It got real dark. I went through the phase of feeling like, you know, maybe it's nihilism, the term I'm looking for, but feeling like, why do anything if everything's going to end in crap anyway? Why try if the government's pulling all the strings and we can't beat them? Why be good if there's maybe no reasoning for it? And I just went into this really dark spiral, and I think thank goodness, and thank whatever's out there, universe, source, however you want to identify with it, because I started to actually, from that darkness, that pull inside of me that knew something was still there, decided, well, what else can I look into? What feels better than just diving down the rabbit holes and getting really upset with society? And that's when I went into spirituality. I started to discover, psychic mediums and tarot cards. And some people will say this is witchcraft stuff and blah, blah, blah. And that's fine. Hold your belief systems. But it pulled me out of darkness. It made me feel so connected in a way that maybe only existed as a child in my innocence. And it felt so nice to feel like, we're so much more than just this physical meaning. We're so much more than just these societal structures that we've created, that there is spirit, and there is a God or a source or a creator, and we can commune with it. We can commune with earth. We can commune with everything. And it really opened me up, and it made me feel so much more hopeful and optimistic about the future, where before, when I was just doing dissolving and going through like the cognitive dissonance of what reality is and grappling with that, it felt really dark and upsetting. I had no hope, and suddenly hope returned, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I really appreciate that part of the journey, because you have to dissolve some of those aspects in order to really wake up. Like, not to be religious, but a lot of times they say, you find God when you're on your knees. And some people's lower points are, vary and everything like that, but it really comes through this feeling of searching within, finding your inner power, finding your inner connection. And I'm
Right.
sure you felt the same way, with your downtime when you went through your first awakening, kind of being like, I'm finally able to sit with myself and be like, well, what else is there?
Right. And you and I have like very, very parallel like similarities throughout, many of our years. And
Mhm.
that's great. With me, it's a little bit different. Like in 2011 and 12, I actually ended up going down more the spiritual side first.
Oh.
This time, so my whole life, I've always, never been religious, but I always believed in God because
Mhm.
it sounded so great and it sounded right and it felt right. And, so when I had my downtime and I was going through, well, see, now my whole life, I've always had something like an inner knowing about things. I'm very comfortable with energy.
Mhm.
Um, so I know that I like energy is like my sixth sense. And I mean that as in I'm an empath. I can
Mhm.
read people's energies. I can feel the energy of like Mother Nature around me. So ultimately, that's kind of where I first started. And I was looking at all the different type of psychics that exist. Like I know I'm one of them because there's something different about me that other people never understood. But to
Yeah.
me, it was a no-brainer. It just felt so right. And so that kind of started my journey. And then in 2016, was when I started my journey down the conspiracy rabbit
Mm.
hole. And that's when I hit my dark spot because at that point I was like, there's no God. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way that there's like a higher being up there who's so holy and mighty, who's allowing all of these things to happen,
Yeah.
like to the children, to the people, like just all the deceit and the corruption. And it really made me so withdrawn. And
Mhm.
like you, I mean, I got into a very, very dark space. And I would have to say, up until very recently, now I'm comfortable with saying that I can comfortably say the word God
Yeah.
now because through the darkness, I've had epiphanies, I've had self awareness of my own open up more, and I've realized that there's a grander picture to all of it, and there's people like you and I, and many, many others out there, star seeds, light workers, really loving people that are here to raise the vibration, the frequency, and to lift us out of these dark times.
Yeah.
And because of knowing that, I've been able to step out of the darkness because it's really sad finding out about all the things that have really happened. I mean, like
Yeah.
it'll literally put
Yeah.
anybody through a dark moment.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important that we speak up about these things and we are like, hey, guess what? We're here. We've gone through it too.
It
I
gets better.
understand you. When you're in this dark place, let me help lead you because
Mhm.
there is light at the end of the tunnel. There's
Yeah.
light at the end and within everything.
Yes. Yes. And to add to what you were just saying, it really does feel hopeless. And it's funny that you said how you're finally comfortable using the word God. For a long time, I would not even use that word unless I was like, you know, God damn it, that was fine. But
Yep.
like referring to any form of higher power as God was just like, no, I'm not saying that. I'll choose any other word but that. But yeah, like questioning why would God or why would source or why would creation itself allow such atrocities? Because I don't even want to get into it yet because we won't be posting this on a space that is pro some of these words.
Right, right.
But yeah, 2016 was when a major leak document came out using certain code words referencing children. And I can't imagine what it was like for you to like have just had your going through the darkness in that time. I had already gone through understanding that there was such abuse going on in higher levels of societies that when I saw this, though it was absolutely traumatizing to see like the proof of this existence, um, and I was consumed by looking into it for weeks. Like I couldn't stop looking into it. I was trying my best to find out and expose as much as I could, but it wasn't a shock to me. As hard as it is to imagine, like, how are you not shocked by this? Like, my mind was so prepared to go into that it was like, of course, of
Mhm.
course, that's also happening. Why wouldn't it be happening? And so at this moment, I almost feel like I can't be shocked. I don't want to really tempt that, but I feel like at this point, I wouldn't be surprised at the level of atrocities that are really going on beneath our
Right.
feet. And
Mhm.
circling back to what I was saying is, how could a creator or a god allow these things to happen? And so while you were talking, you made a good point. I just wanted to write down to re-reference it. It's like there's a bigger picture. And in these pictures, in all pictures and everything that we create, there must be shadows and light casted, or else you can't see dimensions. You can't
And
see it.
ultimately, I am not even sure if we would exist without the dark.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it's the dualistic mentality since, we're in a dualistic world, but,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you um, yeah, I mean, it's exciting thinking about things in the world, it's sad learning about a lot of things, but, through the negative things that I've learned, I have taught myself, I would say since the pandemic,
Yeah.
um, to really search for the light within and find something that you can grow from, or okay, I learned this really bad information. How can we change it? How
Yeah.
can we
What's right?
make
What's the solution?
it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where my mind's always been my whole life.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's so easy to get stuck into like the pessimistic point of view of pointing out what's wrong and then just staying there. And like, yeah, everything serves a purpose. You do need to point these things out. And I feel like staying on that black and white, dark and light and shadows topic of this is that you really have to point out the problems in society. You have to get through that phase. You have to be willing to look at it, to see it in order to address it. But if we stay there, that's when we stay in the aggressive, lower frequencies. So like it serves a purpose, right? We need to look at it. We need to acknowledge it. But then how do we move through this? How do we find a way to say, okay, well, if it's broken, how do we fix it? Okay, well, if there is a problem, there must be a solution. Or if there's dark, we can turn this into light. And so that's so important, because a lot of times you'll have the other side of the spectrum too, that is so love and light that they won't even acknowledge the dark. And in
Yeah,
that way, you also don't solve anything, because
yeah,
if you won't acknowledge the problem and you're just sitting in this world of light, you're kind of isolating yourself. And what happens is you start to live in I don't even want to
fairy
call it a
tale land.
parallel reality. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. I would say it's like living in a fairy tale land
Yeah,
if you're not acknowledging the dark. It's
yeah.
no different than living in the herded society that we're in.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Oh, the,
know,
the word was delusion. I was trying to say. I couldn't I couldn't think of it. It came now.
yes, that's a perfect word. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get delusional in both realms, right? You can go so dark that you actually don't see the whole world. You're only seeing the bad. And you can go so light that you're not acknowledging the world that you're even in. And so being a light worker, being a star seed, being, a being here carnated in this time, we came here to learn this delicate balance between, okay, here's the bad, here's the good. What can I create? What can I create? How do I walk this line? How do I decide that I can acknowledge the bad and harness the good without losing my way, or becoming disconnected from reality where you're not of service to anyone?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's hard too,
Hmm.
because like when I fell into my darkness, I was stuck there
Hmm.
for a couple of years. And even as I was gradually pulling myself out of it, and I couldn't say the word God by any means, I like ran from it.
Yeah.
It's very difficult once you're in the sludge to get out. You
Hmm.
almost need someone to help pull you out.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important for people like us and like so many out there to talk about these things, because when somebody is in that sludge, they can't always necessarily pull themselves out. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying I'm any better or you're any better than anybody else who can't pull themselves out, because
Hmm.
we have. It's hard. It takes years, and
Yes.
it's not fun at
Yes.
all. But it's important for people like us to be there for other people that are going through it, to like be
Hmm.
teachers, guides,
Yes.
guiding.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just really important.
Yeah. And that's because, a lot of times you'll have someone like, because what, you go into like a functional depression. Maybe some people aren't functional, the degrees always vary. So like when I talk, I try to speak on a full spectrum, but I'll generalize here and there. But it's usually like a functional depression. The world sucks, you know it. There's no hope. You're going through your day, you're uninspired, and life's just ticking by. And it gets harder and harder to welcome light in. And sometimes when someone comes in with such positivity, you got to reject it too. It's like, excuse me, that's just your way of looking at it. Like, don't come over here and try to tell me how to be. And that's not what the purpose of guiding is all. It's more or less just showing you that you can pull yourself out. Yes, we've done it, and we've had, somewhat help. Like I was my own source of pulling myself out. But what I started to do was look to others online who are where I want to be, or see things in a way that, resonated, but I couldn't quite grasp yet. And these people became, your first guides. And, I always attribute to a lot of things that I've learned through, these people that I've watched. And I'll cycle through them. And then once the message is taken and done, I'll put that person down for a while, integrate, and maybe find something else. And so, a lot of times you look into your immediate surrounding and there's not a lot of support, because especially if you're the first one waking up in your family, you seem a little psychotic. Like, I don't know about you, but I was having like full mental breakdowns about how there was no point to anything, and like getting stressed out about having pointless job, and feeling like I'm knowing, and deep down inside is where the frustration was coming from, that life has a deeper meaning, and yet living this very mundane, disconnected life. And so it was funny to watch my family kind of observe me. They're very supportive, and they're all kind of on board now with their own personal awakenings. But it was funny to think back to around 2012, 2013, when I was really starting to go through it, how unstable I may have came off. And in 2016 is when spirituality practice for me started to come in. And I was granted this vision, though this vision's not unique to me. I believe Dolores Cannon coined the term New Earth, and a couple other people talk about this and a bifurcation and all that stuff. And I'll always talk about these things all the time, but just to lay some of the groundwork. In 2016, when I was talking to my friend, who is now my current boyfriend, about my vision of the future. And he was at the time, upset and in a hopeless spot. And I was, on the up and up and spiritual. And so as he was talking about, how there's no hope, and there's this dystopian reality, I said, no, no, no. And I just started channeling this information. And I was like, no, that's what they want you to think. They want you to think that the only future for humanity is dystopia. And I'm not saying utopia as in everything's perfect, but why wouldn't we try to make it better? And I started just getting this image that I now coined the term the village. And when I received this village vision, I knew I wasn't the only one receiving it. There was like this feeling deep within me that this was a live transmission, and that people were starting to get this vision, and I was just one of them, granted and tuned in at the time. And so as I was tuned in, I started talking about how we're so disconnected from nature. We need to start having gardens in every household, and removing so much of this wasted concrete parking lots and this and that. Like, just get rid of it, start making things functional, start putting green everywhere. Because how alive do you feel when you go in nature? How connected do you feel? And wondering why the cities, who are like concrete jungles, feel so disconnected. Well, they're not connected to earth. They're in the fake reality. And I started seeing these communities coming together, very village like, where you kind of your neighbors, and you walk down this gravel path to get to your beautiful naturally built home. I favor Cobb. I don't know what it's going to be, but these naturally built homes, and this very easy flowing lifestyle where we come together for ceremonies, and there's small shops, and you just make everything, connected again. And you can still have technology, but not in the way we have it today. And the way we have it today is being used for control and tracking and all this stuff. And we can use that rather for, a good example is measuring soil for its nutrients and its water, and being able to automate and keep, fruits and vegetables at their optimal capacity. Don't worry about tracking what someone just spent their money on or is spending their time on. Track Earth and make sure she's functioning well. Track the sun to make sure that, these climate change stuff that's going on, we understand that it's just cycles, like, connect back and use technology for that purpose so that we can get back to being what it means to be human and community and supporting each other. And this vision was so much more fleshed out than what I just said, but this vision came to me. And by the time I was done saying it, I was like, wow, yeah, that's the timeline I'm going to. And my friend was looking at me like, I never thought that'd be possible. He's like, I used to think about a utopia, or why we couldn't just live better, why we keep choosing to, make things worse and isolate. And from then on, I was just like, that's my mission here, is to help others realize that there's power in the community, that there's power in nature. And the only reason we feel so lost is because we're literally living in a fake version of Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be so wonderful if we can just mix nature with technology. Like you're
Mhm.
saying, you use it for good, you use it for things to help you to get, to be more efficient with the job, and you know, whatever you're doing, building the city, and just to having those two things combined would be so helpful and positive for so many people if we use
Mhm.
technology in the right way. It's in the
Mhm.
wrong hands. It's done from, like you were saying, so many bad things, and manipulation and control. And I feel it would be, and I say this like so easy to switch over, even though it's not, because it would be really easy to switch over from using technology in a negative way and using it in a way it can help us, where we can
Yeah.
build our cities and be
Yeah.
self-sufficient. We have to all get there mentally. We have to
Yeah.
get from a collective. And
Yeah.
once we do, I feel like we can boom, 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 knock it out, and,
Yeah.
and create this wonderful world.
I agree. There
It is
needs
our
to be
future.
there needs to be a spiritual growth first in humanity,
Yes.
because technology has outpaced us.
Yeah.
Um, since the first cell phone came out that literally looked like a brick, and the first computer that was as big as like a modern day dresser, these things
Yeah.
were massive, right? How much technology has advanced and changed
Mhm.
from when it first emerged, or since they showed us to us, because everything happens well beforehand, but that's a whole nother
Yes.
story. So since it first emerged to what we have now is crazy advancements. But then you look outside and nothing has changed. School systems haven't changed. The same thing since it started. The way we use, our everything about modern day life and how we go about our business has changed. I mean, it hasn't changed. Driving cars, everything's the same, right? Technology hasn't been used to advance society. It has only been used to advance technological purposes. And at
Mhm.
this point, we're getting to a stage where they're, introducing sentience. And I think that is, I'm not okay with it. Maybe some other people find it okay, but it's just my personal preference. Um, and so what we need to do, or actually not what we need to do, what I believe will happen is, like you mentioned, when you were injured, you had time off, and suddenly you were having your spiritual connection come back to you. You always had it, but it may have been muffled, and it started coming back to you. The strangely divine orchestrated psyop that this, sickness has allowed a lot of people to have their downtime.
Mhm.
And so we are going through a mass awakening, and we are going through the growing pains and the confusion of this. But there's something beautiful about how we're all connected, how our minds, it's the one mind, right? We all interpret different frequencies, different thoughts, but it's really a mental reality. And so I firmly believe that the reason why big companies spend so much money on advertising, and they literally bombard your faces with in Times Square and all these other cities with billboard after billboard, light after light of selling things. I believe that they do that because they know the power of our minds. You need to constantly be reminded of what reality we're in, because if enough of us begin to believe that this reality is dissolving and that a new one is being birthed, that is exactly what will happen. And so with them controlling the narrative, we know they want to destroy the current system, right? We know they want to move us to the smart system, where they want to merge, human beings with technology. And I know when you said, mixing nature with technology, I know you didn't mean like transhumanism type stuff, but using it to better. So I understand that, but they're looking to do transhumanism, smart grids, smart social contracts, or whatever that one's called. And that's the one they're pitching and showing and pitching and showing. But then there's so many of us who are remembering that, no, we can go back to nature. No, we can do this. No, there's a better way. We can live more peacefully. And as this fear gets heavier and heavier and harder to hold, this destruction energy feels, it's going to put reality in a place of, okay, we're crumbling, but which new reality is the one that will be birthed? Which new mental projection is the one that will come to fruition? And so they're trying very hard to make sure it's this one, and that you think this is your only option. But the reality is we are powerful when our minds are clean, when our minds are purged from this hallucination, and we choose a better reality. And I believe that we don't need 50% of the population. We only need a good handful of the population to be fully anchored in. And that's what we're trying to do here, wake others up to the idea that there's a different reality that we can choose. And I believe when that happens, reality will have to adjust. Whatever Earth is, she's a sentient being, and reality here will adjust. And this can sound crazy.
And that's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Because we are adjusting. Because like you
Yes.
mentioned, through, those last couple of years, and everybody's been forced to be at home, so many waves of hundreds of thousands of people are waking up. Their
Yes.
inside selves are lighting up, and they're like, okay, this isn't right. That's not right. That's not
Yes.
okay. Their whole worlds are being shattered, and the world is going through the dark times you and I have gone through
Yes.
right now.
Collectively. Yeah.
Collectively.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all waking up.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, the ones who are in control, who want to keep it that way, they're using all of this brainwashing, because that's ultimately what it is.
Yeah.
All of the same newscasts saying the same things. I mean,
Yeah.
it's scripted, everything. You hear it enough, you see it enough, you're going to believe it. That is what brainwashing is. And
Yes.
honestly, like, I understand what brainwashing is, but it didn't take me until a couple years ago to really understand what brainwashing really is.
Yeah.
I mean,
And the level that it's at.
yes, the level. And it all comes down to what we think and believe. And you're right. We are so powerful. We are such powerful beings.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we are shattering through
Yeah.
the old world and making our way into the new world. And, I also agree we don't need 50% of the people to move forward either. However, I know by my own feelings that we're greater than 50% even as it is, honestly.
Yeah. What I feel that it is, sorry for cutting you off. I just didn't want to lose this, is that I'm not judging these people when I'm about to say this. It's an easier way, is when you're being brainwashed, someone's doing the thinking for you. So you might actually be unconscious, aka kind of mindless. You're more in a programming, more in a rut, having thoughts but not really thinking for yourself, right? It's a protected echo chamber. And so what happens is when you shatter this illusion, you go through cognitive dissonance multiple times, because every time you learn something new, you have to shatter the old version, and you start to think for yourself. What happens is you take your power back, just like that. And so let's just do a percentage. Numbers aren't my thing. 25% of fully embodied beings versus 75% mindless in a rut. I don't think we need 50%. I think what it is a full embodiment person carries so much potential of the creator energy, the creator frequency that we are, that even if it is 50% right now, even if we are, more than that, I just feel like we are so much more anchored in ourselves that we control the timeline, we control the trajectory, we influence the collective mind so much better than these billboards, flashing lights, nonsense. And if you watch, like, commercials are dumbing down and dumbing down and dumbing down, and it's becoming nonsense. It's like you watch, for the rare times that I even see the TV, I remember like Doritos commercials were always strange. And now I feel like everything is at that level. Everything is like this chaotic. energy and everyone being very stupid and like, oh, I didn't know. Like,
They've been doing it over time. It's
yeah,
like the frogs being in the water and they just
yeah.
keep burning it up.
Yeah, and so the
It up.
bar is just dropping and dropping. And so when we start to embody this, what happens is we change the collective frequency. It gets easier to start accessing these deeper thoughts. So the reason why time is like feels like it's speeding up and everything is we're vibrating faster and faster and faster. And so it may have taken, me and you, let's say 10 years to get where we're at today, where someone can do that in 2 years now. Like it's just it's so much more streamlined. The process is a lot faster, and it doesn't matter when you start. As soon as you start, you're automatically able to just move through this energy, and learn at a lot faster capacity. So that's why I feel like the spiritual awakening that you'd mentioned that we would need in order to catch up to what's going on in the world today, when we get enough of this energy, it's almost going to be like this. I just have this vision that it's going to be like this collective download one day where the narrative suddenly shifts, and fear and hate and lack is going to be an energy that's almost hard to access, because the home resonant frequency will become love and trust in our original codes, because so many of us will be holding on to this code that it'll almost become natural again. And you're just going to have people being like, okay, how do we know I'm feeling better today, and not even noticing maybe that they feel better. And society will just walk towards, as a collective, walk towards, a more healed timeline, that we will no longer resonate with these feelings.
And that door has just opened for us too.
Yeah.
I feel like that door's just open, and like, we have people that are just starting to like step through that door.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's our timeline as well. And you're right. It's like, the 1% controls everybody. We have more than 1%.
Oh yeah.
And like you're saying, when you're so strong in your beliefs and in your knowing, you've gone within, you have all these, let's, 25%, let's just say, people that have really done their work, they've gone within, and they're so strong and powerful and determined in their knowing and their being.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the great thing about that is that, the people that they live in a house with, my energy is going to spread to the people
Yes.
around me in my house.
Yes.
It is going to upgrade them just by default.
Yes.
When we work on ourselves, we heal our lineage from back and
Yes.
from future. So it's so important to constantly work on ourselves and not worry about anybody else.
Mm-hmm. They'll catch up.
The stronger we are, the stronger we lift up everybody else, because we
Yes.
are everybody.
Yes. Nothing's more true than what you just said right there. You become the lighthouse, right? We almost have no choice, right? As soon as you start working on yourself. In the beginning, though, you will get, pushback. People don't like, especially family members or close friends. You're the people you love the most very often will be the ones who won't let you grow in the beginning. But as long as you just push through that, as soon as you start to really anchor that and it becomes your new steadfast frequency, that's when your family starts to be like, whoa, I learned this today, or I'm feeling this fit today. And you realize that you just set the tone.
Yeah.
That you were the person who said, okay, we're raising the frequency a bit higher. I know it's uncomfortable for everybody, but we'll get there. You'll adjust. And because we're electrical beings, we're magnetic, we're connected. So when we start admitting these things, we directly affect each other. Yes. I love that you mentioned that.
We're planting seeds, we're raising energy frequencies around them, and thoughts to me is like the wind.
Yeah.
Because I can have a thought and I'm like, oh my gosh, great. And then it goes back into the collective, and then boom, it goes to you and you end up having that thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, it's so important. The thing that I have learned, the number one most important thing I have learned through this whole experience, throughout my whole life, out of everything I've ever learned up to today, is the most important thing is your thoughts and feelings. And once you have those in alignment, everything else around you starts to fall into place. However, you have to fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the sludge and the slum, like you and I, how we didn't have much support, like my parents and my family are very understanding. They're open-minded about the things I say. But if you were to ask some of them, especially back then, and even some today, they'd be like, she's a little kooky, she's a little out there. And that's okay. I'm planting seeds. But, I just get so excited knowing that I can make such a big difference around the people around me. Um, I'm actually like, I forgot where I was trying to circle back to, because I just get so caught up in
That's
like,
okay. We'll flow.
you know, it's just the I get so caught up in the fact that we have such an effect around the people around
Yeah.
us. And the cool thing is like, even though, okay, this is what I was going to say, even though you and I didn't have that support back when we were going through our awakening, I feel like we were the leaders, not that we're any special or any better, because this path, trust me, has been difficult. Okay.
Yes.
And I wouldn't recommend it upon anybody, but we've been the leaders to pave the path for the people today who are waking up and coming out. And
Yeah.
like what you were saying
And,
earlier,
and those before us who we look
yeah,
to,
yeah,
so
who we've
every
looked to.
time there's this new waves, like you
Yeah.
mentioned before. Yeah.
And like you were saying earlier, once you get past that like stage and you kind of lift yourself back up, then you start seeing more things, and things start making sense. But some people are going to say, well, I'm in that sludge place. How do I get out of it? How do I get out of it? Well, you use technology to help you, in a positive way. You go out there, you find people like us who are talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
You go out there and you find Louise Hay or Dolores Cannon, and you do your research, people who are saying positive things, who are saying true things, and for me, what really helped pull me out of the sludge towards the end was listening to affirmations every day. You
Yeah.
have to fake it until you make it, because when you fake it and you're telling yourself constantly over and over something, guess what? You're going to believe it, because you're brainwashing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're,
I mean,
you're
it's being done
manipulating.
to you, right?
Yep,
You
you're
might as
manipulating.
well.
Yeah, you're manipulating the energy around you, and it's a positive shift and a change. And even if just a little bit of us start doing it, everybody's going to start jumping on the train by
Absolutely.
default.
Absolutely. Yeah. It becomes the resonant frequency. And that's what we're looking to change here, because Earth is increasing hers and some of us are moving faster to match, but we'll all get there. We'll all eventually get there. It's just a matter of which waves are we a part of, because we're all serving a purpose. And I want to just touch on before how you said, that, what can you do when you're in sludge, and what can you do when you feel like there's no hope? It's a lot of times, like I live in the zoomed out perspective a lot, and that's great for observing, but it's not great for when you want to get something done, because it's hard to pinpoint things that need to be done. And a lot of times what happens when you're waking up is you go into depression and anxiety. You go into depression because the world sucks and everything feels pointless, and then you get into anxiety because you don't know what to do about it. So you actually, with these two combinations, you fall into almost like a paralytic state. Not that you can't get up and go to work, but that you're not getting anything different done in your life. And so, like you mentioned, it's about focusing in on what can I control in this moment, and it's yourself. It's choosing your thoughts. And I say choosing to add to your point of how we don't own our thoughts. When I had the 2016 download, I knew 100% in that moment I was not the only one getting this frequency, that our thoughts are not ours, that if you have a thought to invent something, someone else just thought of it. So either you're going to act on it or someone else is going to act on it. This is divine codes coming in.
Yeah.
And, you can have thought loops and say, well, it's not a divine loop, it's not a divine download if I'm hearing, commercial songs in my head. No, that's just brainwashing surfacing and things that have been forced upon you. But what happens is when you start having your own thoughts, there's also intrusive thoughts. I all the time have a random violent thought. I am not going to act out on anything. And it's like, why am I thinking of that? All you have to do when those scenarios kick in is just you don't entertain those. You don't stick on to them. You don't keep thinking about why you thought of them. You let those go. You let all those go. And when you have a thought that's more inspiring, or you have a thought that, can lead you to trying something new, start engaging with those, because you're making a choice every day. You're choosing to identify with the depression, though it's heavy and consuming and feels like you have no other choice. We do. And every moment of the day, we have a choice. And then with that comes the feelings. You can choose to, we're not telling you to numb out and never feel sadness or never feel anger. That's the love and light side who can't address the shadow. What happens is you just don't get stuck and identify with these feelings. They're not you. They're expressions moving through you. They're indicators, they're messengers. And so if you stop trying to find happiness and realize that you can choose it in your moment, that you can choose to say, even though I'm not feeling great today, this happened today and I'm grateful for it. Or, I had this thought today and that was new. And next thing you know, you're changing your thought pattern. You're
Mhm.
changing your resonant frequency slowly but steadily. And things like affirmations, like you mentioned, 100% work because, yes,
Yeah.
you're brainwashing yourself. And it's not brainwashing, it's actually you're changing your thought pattern.
Yeah,
And
no, I
yeah, I
just
wrote
don't.
down right here real quick, like you'll feel like you're going through an imposter syndrome, right? When you said fake it till you make it, you're like, well, this isn't really me. Well, and that's okay. You're right. You're right. It's the step you take before you fully embody it. So
Yeah.
first you start working through it, you create the groundwork. It's like when you get your first new job, or like when I had my first hair client when I was doing hair, I felt like an imposter. I'm like, why am I sitting behind the chair with the scissors? I'm going to cut someone's hair for the first time. Oh my God. But
Mhm.
we all start somewhere. Eventually you become excellent at your craft or excellent at learning how to move through your own thoughts and feelings and allowing the natural cycles of your ebbs and flows. It's not all love and light, but it's also not all darkness.
Well, and for affirmations for me, it's about choosing who I want to be and how I want to feel.
Yes.
So, there's so many different types of affirmations people can choose, like, oh, I want financial abundance, so for me, it's like, okay, this is how I feel today, and I'm going to address it, and I'm going to let those energies cry out of me.
Mm-hmm.
Some people they do kickboxing or take walks or whatever it is. I've always told, because I have teenage children, and I always tell them, process your emotions. You don't want them to get stuck somewhere in your body and then end up, harboring more energy into a place that becomes physical, which is a whole other
Mm-hmm.
topic.
Oh, we'll touch all that.
It's like, allow how you feel to come through.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, I feel like it's very beneficial to write it out on paper
Yeah.
and then put it up, bring it back like 2 weeks later, reread it and go, wow, I felt like that. Well, I don't feel like that today. And okay, so I'm putting certain things into perspective. Maybe I was a little bit too dramatic, or maybe I was overthinking things. And then you burn it and you let it go, and it's no longer a part of you. And as far as the affirmations and faking it till you make it, I chose how I want to feel
Mm-hmm.
with my affirmations. I'm like, I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel defeated. I don't want to feel like this world is such an ugly, hateful, like weird place to live in. I want to feel like I'm happy, I'm loved, I'm surrounded by positivity, and everybody outside in the world around me is happy. So, you know, affirmations, and I still have to do them,
Yeah.
are the best thing, in my
Yeah.
opinion, to get people out
It's
of a slump.
reinforcement, it's a
Mhm.
reinforcement. Like you said, if you're not resonating with an affirmation, you don't have to use that one. It can be
Right.
as simple as I'm calm today.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
safe. And then
Yeah.
you can move it on to I'm a shining ball of light. When you really want to start, you let it work for you. You find what resonates with you. And you can only do that by taking your attention away from the world stage,
Mhm.
away from the dramas of everybody else, getting out of the zoomed out perspective, and just for some time zooming in and checking in with yourself and saying, okay,
Yeah.
how do I control the snare? How do I become um, responsible for change? How do I embody this new thing? And
Right.
a lot of times, when you're depressed, it's really your soul asking for a reset.
Mhm.
It's like, this isn't working anymore. I'm not lit up, or I'm not, I'm not feeling good. We just need to
Mhm.
reset. We need to start over again. And that can be painful sometimes to think about, and going through these changes is definitely not easy breezy. It's meant to be messy. It's meant to be, you know you're not supposed to color in the lines. It just is. And if you just allow yourself, because a lot of times I feel like we put so much responsibility on ourselves of things we can't control. And it's
Mhm.
like, what's your next step? That's all you have to look at. You don't have to look at how far you're going to be going. Can you see your destination? What's the
Mhm.
whole path?
Mhm.
The real thing is, what is your next step?
Yeah.
Can you see your next step? If so, just do that.
You focus on it, like I'm a Sagittarius to get that, archer, and I shoot and I aim, and that's what I focus on. And, it's like, don't feed the fears.
Yeah.
Address them, okay, be acknowledged, okay, well, it's the first time I'm doing something, I'm nervous, okay, cool, address it. But then, let that go
Hmm.
and then go back to focusing on the goal. and the
Yes.
final destination of where you want to be, for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh,
Mhm.
I love that. This
Yeah.
was, I think, a beautiful first introduction to guiding stars. I think we should leave it here for now. And I thank you so much for everyone who is going to tune in. And then I also thank you for sharing space. Looking to do this hopefully every week if we can.